My fiancée announced she was leaving me for my best friend in front of 46 guests. 8 months later, she wants me back, but I'm not the same man anymore. My name is Io, and up until that engagement dinner, I felt I had my life together. I was about a month away from marrying Lily, the woman I had been with since college. My best friend Sam was supposed to be my best man. My parents were overjoyed and already making plans for the kind of future grandparents they hoped to be. Everything looked amazing. But as it turns out, perfection is only on the surface. Beneath it lurked a jumble of secrets and betrayals that I was too blind, or perhaps too trusting, to notice. When Lily stood up during supper, the world as I knew it fell apart like a cheap piñata. Her comments rang in my ears long after I walked away. I recall how my mother's face collapsed, the horror in my father's eyes, and the awkward shuffling of seats as guests tried to understand what had just transpired. I spent the following few weeks in a blur, staying at my brother's house while I figured out what to do next. Dan, my older brother by 3 years, has always been the pillar of our family. He didn't say much, just handed me a beer and let me nap on his couch until I felt ready to face the world again. I was grateful for the silence, the opportunity to feel without having to explain. I eventually moved back to my flat, which Lily and I had shared. She had taken her belongings, but her presence remained in the empty places. A misplaced hairpin on the bathroom counter, a half-burned candle on the ledge. I threw myself into work, hoping that burying my head in spreadsheets and client meetings would relieve the pain. It worked to some extent, but every now and then I found myself staring out the window, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Sam attempted to reach out several times. His texts remained unopened. I couldn't bring myself to confront him, not after what he and Lily had done. The treachery cut deeper than I expected. We'd been buddies since middle school, bonding over our mutual love of comic books and awful science fiction films. I trusted him with everything, and he repaid my faith by snatching the one person I believed I could rely upon. So, when Lily walked up today with mascara streaked over her cheeks, I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, telling her to leave and never return, but another half, the part that remembered how she used to laugh at my foolish jokes, paused. She seemed lost, like a child who had wandered too far from home. I stood there, divided between rage and what felt uncomfortably like sympathy. "Elio," she said, her voice cracking. "I apologize. I didn't know who else to go to. I wanted to know why she believed I'd care, why she thought I'd be her savior after everything that had happened." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I simply nodded and signaled for her to sit down. We sat in silence for what seemed like an age, the air dense with things unsaid. She finally spoke, her words spilling out quickly. Sam had left her. Apparently, the grass wasn't greener on the other side after all. She realized too late that what she thought was love was actually infatuation. She wished to return, to try to repair the damage she had caused. But deep down, I realized that some things could not be repaired. I'm not sure what I'll do next. Part of me wants to forgive her, to salvage some pleasant memories from the devastation. But another part of me, the part that has been gently rebuilding, understands that moving on requires letting go. I suppose time will tell which side prevails in the end. For the time being, I'm simply trying to breathe, take things one day at a time, and perhaps, just maybe, find a way to forgive myself for not recognizing the warning signs sooner. I sat in my car, the engine still humming faintly, trying to make sense of Lily's abrupt return to my life. The irony was not lost on me. I'd spent months trying to forget the way she used to laugh, how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she was truly delighted. Now she was asking for forgiveness, and I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The office building loomed in the distance, a sharp reminder of the life I'd constructed after Lily. I was supposed to be inside, answering emails and pretending everything was normal. But instead, I was parked in the lot, struggling with demons from a past I thought I'd left behind. "Elio," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. I acknowledged that I made a mistake. "I know this, but I need you to understand. I never intended to hurt you." Her words hung in the air, full of hidden truths. I wanted to believe her, to imagine that the previous 8 months had been nothing more than a horrible dream. But I couldn't erase the sight of her standing at that engagement dinner, her hand interlaced with Sam's, as if it had always belonged there. I shook my head, attempting to dispel the cloud of memory. Lily's apology was a balm, but it was also a dagger, reopening wounds I had meticulously sewn shut. Did she truly believe that a few tears and a heartfelt confession could heal the damage? Could you erase betrayal? The reality was that part of me wanted to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. I wanted to let go of the bitterness that had crept into my bones and find peace in the devastation she had left behind. But another part of me, the one that had learned to stand on its own, wasn't ready to let her back in. I looked at my phone. The screen lit up with a message from my brother. "Dan, are you okay?" Simple. Director. I liked that about him. He never sobbed. Instead, he offered his presence like a lighthouse amid a storm. With a sigh, I texted back, "Yes, just processing. She showed up today." His response was immediate. "Do you want to talk about it?" I paused, my fingers hovering above the keys. Did I want to discuss it? Did I even know what to say? Before I could decide, another message appeared. This one came from an unusual number. "Elio, this is Sam. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen, the letters blending together as my heart thudded in my chest. Sam. The name alone was a trigger, a reminder of everything I had lost. He hadn't tried to contact me in months, not since the initial rush of ignored texts and voicemails. So why now? I had no idea what he wanted, but I knew I wasn't prepared to confront him. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. I closed the message without responding, my head swirling with contradictory emotions. The air in the car felt stuffy and oppressive. I needed to move, to get away from my own thoughts. Without thinking, I started the engine and drove out of the parking lot, the road extending ahead of me like a lifeline. As I drove, the metropolis blurred into a tapestry of grey and green, and the familiar streets provided a strange kind of comfort. I found myself heading toward the park where Lily and I used to spend lazy Sundays, back when the world looked full of promise. It was a site of memories, both cherished and terrible, but I needed to confront them if I ever wanted to move on. The park was calm, with the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the grass. I stopped the car and strolled toward the pond, which glistened in the light. I stood there for a time, allowing the tranquility to wash over me before sitting on a bench. I closed my eyes and listened to the distant laughter of children playing and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity, a flicker of understanding. Lily's reappearance had reawakened sentiments I believed I had suppressed, but perhaps that was a good thing. Perhaps it was time to face the past, address the suffering, and move on. I took a deep breath, the air chilly and crisp, then opened my eyes. The way ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep hiding from my emotions. Whether or not I chose to forgive Lily and let her back into my life was entirely my decision. But for now, I'd take it one step at a time. One day at a time. My phone buzzed again while I sat there, lost in contemplation. Another message from Sam. "Thank you, Elio. It's important." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. What could be so essential that he'd contact me now, after all this time? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I couldn't ignore him forever. Perhaps it was time to hear what he had to say, to finally close this chapter of my life. I stood up. The decision had been made. I'd meet Sam, hear him out, and maybe, just maybe, I'd be able to move forward. The choice to meet him felt like a weight had lifted. But as I drove to the cafe where we agreed to meet, a different heaviness settled in my chest, the kind that comes with uncertainty and the fear of reopening old wounds. Back in college, we frequented the place. A charming little cafe set away from the main street with mismatched chairs and the aroma of freshly baked pastries drifting through the air. It felt like a lifetime ago. I parked a block away, wanting the walk to clear my mind. The pavement was scattered with fallen leaves, crunching beneath my feet as I approached the door. I halted, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. Sam was already there, seated at a corner table, scanning the room until his gaze landed on me. He looked different, older maybe, or simply weighed down by the consequences of his choices. It was hard to tell. I approached cautiously. Each step felt like a mile. "Hey," I muttered, barely above a whisper. "Hey," he said, standing awkwardly and motioning for me to sit. "Thanks for coming." I nodded and slid into the seat opposite him. Silence stretched between us, thick with things neither of us was ready to say. I studied him, trying to reconcile the man sitting in front of me with the friend I used to know. His hair was longer and unkempt, dark circles pooled under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry, Elio," he said, his voice strained. "I know I have no right to ask you to be here, but I need to explain." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Explain what, Sam?" "That you and Lily fell in love? That you thought it was okay to betray me?" He winced, shame written across his face. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I swear, it just did, and I know that doesn't make it right." "Then why now?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Why reach out after all this time?" He hesitated, eyes dropping to his hands. "Because I'm leaving. Elio, I got a job offer in Seattle. I'm moving next week." The realization hit harder than I expected. Sam is leaving. The thought of him being so far away felt like the final nail in the coffin of what used to be our friendship. "So, this is goodbye?" I asked, my voice laced with doubt. "Yeah," he replied softly. "And I couldn't leave without trying to make things right, or at least as right as they can be." I wanted to laugh at the foolishness of it all, as if a few words could patch the cracks in our relationship. But as I looked at the man who once felt like a brother, I realized something. I needed this closure just as much as he did. "Do you love her?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked up, eyes meeting mine. "I thought I did, but now, I don't know. Everything's so messed up." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. Love was a tricky beast. It didn't always follow the rules. "And Lily?" "She's staying," he said, the words barely audible. The twisted web of our past continued to hold me hostage, a constant reminder of what once was and what could never be again. I worried if I'd ever fully be free of it, or if I was destined to carry these ghosts with me forever. After an hour, I gave up. My body was fatigued, but my mind was racing. I went to the locker room, splashed cold water on my face in a futile attempt to wash away the memories. As I looked in the mirror, I couldn't recognize the man staring back. He looked older, wearier, as though he'd lived 1,000 lifetimes since that tragic engagement dinner. I dried my face and stepped outside, the sinking sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. As I walked to my car, my phone chimed again. This time, it was Dan. "Hey, are you okay? Do you want to come over for a beer?" I smiled, grateful for his unwavering support. I texted back, "Yes, I'll be there in 20. The drive to Dan's house was short, and when I arrived, he was already on the porch with 2 beers in hand. He tossed one to me as I climbed the steps, and we sank into the worn-out chairs that had witnessed countless late-night conversations. "Thanks for coming," he said, taking a sip. "Mum's been asking about you. She's worried." I nodded, the old guilt surfacing. "I'll call her tomorrow. Just needed some time to think." He looked at me for a while, then nodded. "Lily?" "Yeah," I replied, the word lingering on my tongue. "She wants to talk." Dan didn't say anything. He just took another sip. He knew when to push and when to let me be, a skill refined over a lifetime of brotherhood. We sat in a quiet stillness, crickets chirping in the background and the cool night breeze brushing our skin. I stared out into the yard, the shadows of trees swaying gently, and a strange sense of calm washed over me. "I met with Sam today," I said finally, breaking the silence. "He's moving to Seattle." Dan raised an eyebrow. And how do you feel about that? I shrugged. Relieved, I guess. Sad, too. It's complicated. Life usually is, he replied with a soft smile. But you're handling it better than most would. I appreciated the vote of confidence, even if I wasn't sure I deserved it. We moved on to lighter topics, work, the latest movies, anything to avoid the elephant in the room. But eventually the conversation circled back. Do you think you'll forgive her? Dan asked, his tone gentle but probing. I don't know, I admitted, the truth heavy in my chest. I want to, but it's hard. Part of me still loves her, but another part just can't. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Whatever you decide, just make sure it's for you, not for her. I nodded, grateful for his clarity. Thanks, Dan. I mean it. We sat a little longer, the stars glittering overhead, the world hushed around us. It was a rare moment of peace, a break from the turmoil in my mind. Eventually, I stood, stretching the tension from my limbs. I should get going. Need to get some sleep before tomorrow. Dan stood with me and walked me to my car. Call me if you need anything. Will do, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. Thanks for everything. As I drove home, the streets were empty, the city asleep. I felt a strange mixture of anticipation, dread, and hope swirling in my stomach. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. When I finally crawled into bed, exhaustion pulled at my eyelids, but sleep eluded me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, Lily and Sam lingering in my thoughts. I imagined what she might say, what I might say, and whether this conversation would finally give me the closure I so desperately craved. As I hovered on the edge of sleep, one thought anchored me. Whatever happened tomorrow, I was ready to face it, ready to confront the past, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to release it. And with that, I fell into a restless sleep, thoughts of laughter and betrayal swirling in the dark. The early sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the bedroom floor. I lay there, squinting at the ceiling, trying to piece together fragments of erratic dreams. Conversations with Lily and Sam echoed in my mind, tangled with my own doubts. Today was the day I'd face Lily, and maybe find a shred of peace. I pulled myself from bed, my shoulders heavy with anticipation. The flat was still, save for the hum of distant traffic. I wandered to the kitchen, grounding myself in the routine of brewing coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, I focused on the simple act of pouring a cup, hoping it would steady my nerves. The knock on the door came sooner than expected, a jarring reminder that the moment I'd been dreading was now at hand. I set the mug down, my fingers trembling slightly as I wiped them on my pants. I took a breath and opened the door. Lily stood there, her eyes meeting mine. She looked different, older, like she'd been carrying her own burdens. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweater that seemed to hang on her frame. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. Her words were a far cry from the flood of emails she'd been sending, messages filled with regret and pleas to talk. "Hi," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. She walked past me, her presence familiar and foreign all at once, like a song I hadn't heard in years, but still remembered by heart. We settled into the living room, the silence between us, stretched taut, like a delicate thread neither of us dared to snap. I watched her as she looked around, her gaze settling on the empty places that had once held her belongings. It was strange to see her again in the space where we had shared so many memories. "Thanks for agreeing to see me," she murmured, breaking the silence. Her hands twisted anxiously in her lap, a move I recognized too well. "I figured we needed to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's been a long time," she nodded, her eyes catching mine. "I know I hurt you, Elio, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." Her words were sincere, but they couldn't undo the past. I turned my attention away, focusing on a random spot on the carpet. "Why now, Lily? Why come back after all this time?" She took a long breath, her gaze dropping to her hands. "Because I realized I made a mistake. I thought I wanted something different, but I was wrong. I've spent months trying to figure out how to fix what I broke. I let her words sink in, the weight of them pressing into me. And Sam? I asked, needing to hear it from her. We're done, she whispered, grief shadowing her voice. He's moving to Seattle next week. It's over. I nodded, partly relieved, partly reminded of how tangled everything had become. I met with him yesterday, I said, watching her face. She looked surprised, with a flicker of something else, hope, perhaps, flickering in her eyes. And we talked. He apologized, said he didn't want to leave without trying to make things right. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. I'm trying to move on, Lily, but it's hard. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me. Not right away. But I had to try. For a moment, we sat in silence, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the room. I could feel her eyes on me, quietly pleading for some sort of understanding. I don't know if I can forgive you, I murmured, barely audible. But I don't want to carry this anger anymore. It's exhausting. She wiped her tears, a small, hopeful smile forming on her lips. That's all I can ask for. We talked a little longer, our conversation shifting from the past to the present. It was awkward to talk about ordinary things, jobs, mutual friends, but it was a start, a first step towards something like closure. Eventually, she stood, signaling that it was time to go. Thank you, Elio, she said sincerely, for giving me the chance to explain. I nodded and walked her to the door. Take care of yourself, Lily. You too, she said, pausing briefly before stepping into the hallway. I watched her leave, the door closing quietly behind her. I stood there for a long time, wrapped in the apartment's silence. The conversation had been painful, but necessary. It was a step toward healing, a step toward letting go. As I returned to the living room, my phone vibrated on the coffee table. I picked it up and saw a new message. It was from Dan. Mom is making lasagna. Are you in? I smiled. The warmth of family was a balm for my worn-out heart. I typed a simple reply. I wouldn't miss it. As I set the phone down, a sense of peace washed over me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in months, I could see a path forward, a chance to rebuild, to begin again. I headed toward the kitchen when my phone buzzed once more. Another message, this time from Sam's number. Hello, Elio. I've been thinking about our conversation. Can we meet again? I stared at the screen, my heart skipping a beat. It seemed the past wasn't done with me just yet. I read Sam's message again, the words swimming in my vision as I tried to figure out what more he could possibly want. We had already said our goodbyes, hadn't we? Or at least as much of a goodbye as anyone could hope for after that kind of betrayal. But here he was, reaching out again. It had been painful, but it felt like a necessary step, a means to relieve myself of the fury that had been my constant companion for the past few months. I expected to feel lighter afterward, but instead I felt empty, as if I had been holding on to something for so long that I no longer knew how to let it go. Sam wanted to meet again. I couldn't help but wonder if this was another step I needed to take, another piece of the puzzle I had to put in place before I could truly move forward. I picked up the phone again, my fingers hovering over the screen. Finally, I sighed and typed a brief response. Okay. When and where? His reply came quickly. Coffee shop near the park. Tomorrow at 10. I nodded to myself, a strange combination of dread and excitement settling in my gut. It was the same cafe where we'd met the day before, and so much had been left unsaid. I wondered what new truths or complications awaited me this time. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to focus on work or anything that could distract me from the swirl of thoughts churning inside my head. But no matter how hard I tried, my mind kept drifting back to Sam, to Lily, to the tangled web of everything we had become. That evening, I returned to Dan's apartment, craving the comfort of his steady presence. He didn't ask about the message. He didn't probe. Instead, we watched an old movie we'd loved as kids. letting the familiar lines and predictable plot points wrap around us like a worn blanket. For a few hours, I let myself disappear into that nostalgia. But as I drove home, the weight of the coming conversation pressed down on me again. I knew sleep would be elusive. My mind ran wild with questions, speculations, scenarios, wondering what Sam wanted, what he might say, and how I'd respond. Morning arrived too quickly. The sunlight streamed through the blinds while I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My eyes felt gritty with exhaustion, but my body was already alert, tense with anticipation. I got up and moved through my morning routine on autopilot, clinging to the rhythm and normalcy of it. The brushing, the dressing, the quiet hum of the kettle, as though it could anchor me in the present. By the time I left the apartment, I felt a little more prepared, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, the morning rush long gone. I ordered a coffee and took a seat by the window, where the park's soft beauty offered a brief distraction. I watched people pass by, laughing, walking dogs, pushing strollers, their lives seemingly simple, untouched by the storm mine had become. Sam arrived a few minutes later. His expression was unreadable as he spotted me and approached. We exchanged a short nod, acknowledging the tension between us. He sat down, and for a moment, silence stretched between us like a taut wire. "Thanks for meeting me," he finally said, his voice low. "Be careful." "I'm not sure why we're here again," I admitted honestly, sipping my coffee. "I thought we said everything yesterday." He nodded, eyes dropping to his hands. "I know, but there's something else I need to tell you." I waited, the anticipation gnawing at me. "Okay, go on." He took a deep breath, meeting my gaze. "I didn't just come to apologize yesterday. I told you about Seattle because I wanted to give you this." He pulled a small packet from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. I stared at it, puzzled. "What is this?" "It's a letter," he said calmly, though his eyes betrayed a nervous flicker. "From Lily. She wrote it after everything happened, but she never sent it. I found it while packing, and I think you should read it." I hesitated, my thoughts spinning. A letter. From Lily. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what it said, whether reopening that wound would help or hurt. But something in Sam's face told me it mattered. I picked up the envelope and turned it over in my hands. "Why didn't she send it?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought it wouldn't change anything, but I think she wanted you to have it." I nodded and slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket. "Okay, I'll read it." We sat in silence again, unsure how to end something neither of us had expected. Sam finally stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "I hope it helps," he said simply. "Thanks, Sam," I said, surprised by how much I meant it. "Safe travels to Seattle." He nodded, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "Take care, Elio." As he walked away, a strange sense of closure washed over me. Whatever the letter held, it felt like the final piece, the last thing I needed to face before truly letting go. I remained at the cafe for a while, the envelope heavy in my pocket, before finally rising and heading home. As I walked, a calm swept through me, a quiet strength. I felt ready for whatever came next. Back at my place, I sat at the kitchen table, the letter lying in front of me. I took a long breath, steadying myself, and carefully opened it. Lily's familiar handwriting greeted me. "A bridge to the past." I began reading, my heart thudding in my chest, knowing that this was the moment I would finally be free. The letter sat there, deceptively simple, just paper and ink, yet it held the weight of everything we had lived through. I unfolded the pages slowly, each curve of Lily's pen a reminder of the person I once knew. "Elio, I don't know how to start this, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've replayed that night over and over, wishing I could undo it, wishing I had seen the hurt I was causing before it was too late." I paused, my chest tight with the echo of her regret. It felt strange to read her words, so tender, so raw, after everything had crumbled. "I was selfish, Elio. I thought I was doing what was right for me, but I didn't see how wrong it was for us. Sam. He was a mistake. I see that now. I was looking for something, but I didn't realize I already had it with you. Her admission stung and soothed at the same time. I'd spent months dissecting our relationship, trying to understand the why, and here it was, raw and vulnerable, scrawled in her handwriting. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I lost that right. But I hope, one day, you'll remember the good times we shared. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. I set the letter down, my hands trembling slightly. It was everything I needed to hear, and nothing I wanted to know. Her words were honest, but they couldn't rewrite history. They couldn't undo the betrayal or the pain that had followed. Still, something inside me loosened. Maybe it was the closure I'd been chasing, or maybe it was the clarity that came with understanding her side, finally confronting the ghosts instead of running from them. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The flat was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic outside. I breathed in, slow and deep, feeling the tension leave my body in pieces. It was over. The chapter that had gripped my life for so long was closing. I had faced Sam. I had faced Lily. And now I had to face myself, the man I had become through it all, someone stronger, wiser, and maybe, finally, ready to move on. Here is your beautifully reflective closing section, refined with flawless grammar, fluid transitions, and your original tone intact, elegant, hopeful, and full of quiet strength. I rose, carefully folding the letter and placing it back in the envelope. It was now part of my story, a reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. But it did not define me, not anymore. As I walked to the window, I looked out at the world beyond. The city pulsed with life, its streets teeming with people going about their day, unaware of the silent battles being fought behind closed doors. And yet, I felt connected to them, a quiet solidarity in the shared experience of being human. The private struggles, the quiet triumphs, the resilience it takes to keep going. My phone buzzed, snapping me from my thoughts. A message from Dan. Dinner's at 6 o'clock. Don't be late. I smiled, grateful for the grounding presence of family. I typed a quick reply. I'll be there. As I set the phone down, a sense of anticipation stirred within me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to meet it, ready to embrace whatever came next, confident in the strength I had reclaimed. I glanced once more at the letter, offering it a final silent farewell before heading to the door. The sun was sinking now, casting a warm golden glow across the skyline. And as I stepped outside, I noticed a lightness in my step, a new kind of freedom in my heart. The past was behind me, and I was free to define the future. Whatever it held, I knew I was ready, for life, for love, and for the journey ahead. And as I made my way to Dan's, I carried with me a quiet conviction that everything, finally, was going to be okay.